Please help me.
With a face on the verge of tears, the niece handed me something. It was a simple photo of my brother, her father, at a party with some colleagues. What's wrong all of a sudden? Help you? With what? What are you two doing there? Just as I was about to ask, my sister-in-law intervened with a stern look. I've been looking for you. Come with me. And in an instant, she took the niece away. Left alone, I casually flipped the photo over, and on the back, there was a message from my brother. If anything happens to me, please protect my daughter. My name is Beth. I'm 32 years old and work as an office clerk at the construction company my family runs. My brother, who was 10 years older than me, was hardworking from a young age and carried the heavy expectations of being the heir to our family business. Everyone, including me, assumed that he would inherit the company. However, after graduating from high school, he increasingly clashed with our father and grandfather over management policies. It seemed my brother had no intention of taking over the company.
I love being a carpenter, but I'm not doing it to inherit the business.
He would say this all the time. Then one day,
I've met someone I want to marry.
He brought home a woman. Her name was Sarah. With her easygoing personality, she quickly bonded with our family, but she never lived with us.
I'm getting married and moving out.
What? You're not going to take over the company?
You know how I don't get along with Dad. Sorry for the trouble, but this is how it's going to be.
With that, my brother gently patted my head and, just a few days later, got married and moved out. Even then, he kept in touch with me, chatting about trivial things.
Sarah's dinner tonight was delicious, as always. She's a nutritionist, so she makes sure it's good for my high blood pressure.
Yeah, I've heard that many times. You never get tired of bragging. I was genuinely happy as long as my brother was happy. A few years after they got married, my niece Summer was born. From then on, I would occasionally meet with my brother and his wife. They seemed very happy, and their daughter grew up loved by both of them. When the niece turned 10, talks of mending our family's relationship with my brother began. If we could laugh together as a family again, nothing would make me happier. But that wish was never granted. One day, while I was working as usual, my sister-in-law called me, which was unusual. Normally, I would hear from my brother, not her. Puzzled, I answered the phone immediately. Hello, Sarah? Oh, Beth. What's going on? It's rare for you to call. Listen calmly. Your brother, he fell from a scaffold while working and was taken to the hospital. It seems he slipped because of the rain. The news was so sudden. It felt like time had stopped, and my mind went blank. I quickly called my parents, who were also at work, and we rushed to the hospital in the pouring rain. When we entered the hospital room, led by a nurse, there was my brother, his skin pale. Seeing him like that made the phone call's content suddenly feel real, and I collapsed to the floor. Brother. The voice that escaped me was so faint, it surprised even me, and the overwhelming sadness only grew stronger. Next to the bed, my sister-in-law cried loudly, not caring who was watching, like the heroine of a tragedy. Her intense sobbing made my tears dry up, and I just stared at her. But for some reason, her behavior seemed off. And next to her, the niece, with a pale face, trembled as if scared, without shedding a tear. Are you okay? She didn't respond, possibly in shock from losing her father. After the wake at our house, while the family was mourning, I quietly cried alone in a deserted corner of the porch. The photo of my brother used for the memorial had been taken recently. He looked a bit worn out but had a peaceful expression. Did my brother lead a happy life? As I thought about this, the niece's face came to mind. When I last spoke to him, my doting brother joyfully told me about taking his daughter to amusement parks and zoos. The niece must be devastated by her father's death too. Thinking about her feelings, tears welled up again, but then a familiar voice called out to me.
Aunt.
There she was, with tears brimming in her eyes. Summer? Oh, what's wrong? I wiped my tears and asked, trying to stay calm.
Aunt, help me. I'm going to be killed too.
What? I couldn't quite catch her words, and as I tried to ask again, she bit her lip and handed me something.
Daddy told me to give this to Aunt Beth if anything happened to him.
From your dad? It was a brown envelope. It looked a bit worn, as she had been holding on to it for some time. Just then. What are you doing? Startled by the cold voice behind me, I turned around to see my sister-in-law with a stern expression. I've been looking for you. Come here.
Mom.
Grabbing her daughter's arm, my sister-in-law quickly walked away before I could stop her. She had always been friendly and kind, but now, she seemed like a different person. It's right after her husband died, so maybe it's natural. But the niece also seemed a bit strange. Left alone, I opened the envelope and found a simple photo inside. It looked like it was taken at a party. My brother was smiling with a few colleagues. I instinctively turned the photo over. There, in my brother's slightly angular handwriting, was a message. If anything happens to me, please protect my daughter. I widened my eyes, too shocked to speak. I think the niece was asking for help. Could it be related to this photo? I called a friend of mine who's a police officer and arranged to meet the next day. Normally, the funeral would be held the day after the wake, but since the crematorium was unavailable due to a friend's funeral, there was a one-day gap. That extra day allowed us to uncover the truth behind my brother's death. The next morning, when I arrived at the meeting place, he was already there, waiting for me. Sorry for calling you out of the blue.
It's fine, I'm off duty today. So, what's going on?
Well, I explained everything that had happened, and he listened intently.
From a police perspective, there's not enough evidence for us to act on this.
I see.
Sorry, I can't be of more help. But if anything happens, feel free to reach out.
Thanks. Just talking to you helped me clear my mind. Even after parting ways with him, I kept thinking about the meaning behind the photo my niece gave me. But no matter how many times I looked at it, the meaning of the photo and my brother's message remained a mystery. How can I find more clues? This message alone doesn't tell me enough. If I could ask the niece directly, I might learn more, but I had a feeling my sister-in-law would interfere again. Just then, an idea struck me. If I look through my brother's belongings, I might find some clues. Unable to wait any longer, I headed to my sister-in-law's house. Sorry to bother you at such a busy time. I was worried about you and Summer. Thanks for coming. She is in her room, but let's leave her alone for now. She's feeling down after losing her father. As she spoke, my sister-in-law invited me into the living room. She had always kept the house spotless, but today it felt strangely barren. Huh? There's nothing of my brothers here. And the family photos that were here before are gone too. I looked around, but there was no sign that my brother had ever lived there. I kept scanning the room, hoping to find something of my brothers, when my sister-in-law returned with tea and some homemade snacks. What caught my eye was the light purple bead bracelet on her wrist. It wasn't her style, nor my brother's, so it felt out of place. After taking a bite of the snack and finding it overwhelmingly salty, I quickly gulped down some tea. My sister-in-law tilted her head in confusion. Really? I don't think it's that salty. Her cooking, as a licensed nutritionist, was always delicious, to the point where my brother eagerly rushed home after work just to enjoy it. But something was clearly off this time. Could she have been feeding such salty food to my brother, who had high blood pressure? Since arriving at my sister-in-law's house, an uneasy feeling had been growing inside me. Suddenly, I began to worry about Summer. I want to talk to Summer. She's in her room, right? Just as I stood up to head toward Summer's room, my sister-in-law intervened. No, you can't see her. What? Why not? I'm sorry, but you need to leave. We're busy preparing for the funeral. She grabbed my wrist, forcibly pushing me out into the hallway and then out of the house. As I stood there, pondering my next move, Summer appeared at a second-floor window. She placed a finger to her lips, signaling for silence, and tossed something down to me. It was a small key, wrapped in a cute notepad paper. The note read, "This is the key to the storage room. After you use it, hide it under the flower pot so it won't be found." I silently gave Summer a thumbs up, and she nodded before quietly closing the window. I snuck around to the backyard, and using the key Summer gave me, I unlocked the storage room. Inside, I found a large collection of my brother's belongings. Among them, I discovered a diary. My brother had always been diligent about documenting his daily life, even back when he lived with us. This is. As I read the diary, I found content that was hard to believe. He wrote about how the seasoning in their meals had become increasingly strong. Even when he pointed it out, his wife, the nutritionist, would dismiss his concerns, telling him to trust her expertise. He also mentioned that his health had been deteriorating recently. The diary also revealed the meaning behind the photo my brother had left behind. This is unforgivable. The next day, a large crowd gathered for my brother's funeral, including family members and his work colleagues. When my sister-in-law took the microphone to give a speech as the bereaved wife, I stood up and interrupted her. There's something I need everyone to hear. Beth? What are you doing? Ignoring her surprised reaction, I stepped forward in front of the family. My brother's death, it wasn't an accident. The room buzzed with murmurs, and my sister-in-law's expression turned grim. What are you saying? He slipped and fell from the scaffolding while working. I showed everyone my brother's diary. Everything is written here. My sister-in-law, who normally cooks so well, began making dishes with much stronger seasoning. My brother's health started to decline, and despite his high blood pressure, he was being fed salty snacks and soup daily, with no option to leave anything uneaten. Isn't that strange, Sarah? I don't know anything about that. I was always careful with his meals. I glanced at her, fully prepared for her to deny everything, and then pulled out another piece of evidence. This is the photo my brother left for me. At first, I didn't understand its significance. But yesterday, when I visited your house, I realized the truth. Someone in this photo is wearing a light purple bead bracelet, identical to the one you were wearing, Sarah. As I pointed to the person in the photo, all eyes turned toward them. Max, you and Sarah were having an affair, weren't you? My brother trusted you more than anyone else as his colleague. So why would you do this? The room erupted into whispers, while my sister-in-law glared at me, and Max looked pale and visibly shaken. I had known Max for a long time. He and my brother had become close after my brother started working, and he often visited our home. I could see the same bracelet on Max's wrist, the one that matched my sister-in-law's. My brother must have been deeply conflicted, knowing that the person he trusted the most was the one betraying him, and possibly even trying to take his life. That's why he couldn't bring himself to speak plainly and left this photo instead. As I spoke through tears, Max broke down, clutching his head. A diary and a bracelet aren't enough to prove an affair or that I had anything to do with his death. She lashed out in anger, but I had anticipated this and continued with more evidence. There's more. My brother checked Sarah's phone and saw emails between the two of you. In them, you discussed how to get rid of him because he was in the way of your relationship. That's nonsense. Is it? It wouldn't be hard to verify. At first, you considered using his high blood pressure to slowly poison him with salty foods, but it was taking too long. Desperate to be with Max, you asked him to stage an accident at the worksite, to push my brother from a height on a rainy day, and to say he simply slipped if anyone asked. Isn't that right? I never said that. It was all his idea. She pointed at Max, trying to shift the blame. Max shook his head in denial. Max, it was raining the day my brother died, wasn't it? Max nodded slightly. Normally, work would be halted on a rainy day, so why?
It was just a drizzle, and the deadline was close, so she said we should go ahead. I thought it was an opportunity.
My brother trusted you as a friend, right up to the end. I heard someone gulp audibly as Max turned to Summer and fell to his knees, bowing his head.
I was led astray by her, and I've done something terrible. I'm truly sorry.
Summer looked at him with sorrowful eyes as he continued to apologize, tears streaming down his face. Even then, my sister-in-law kept shouting. I didn't know anything. I'm not guilty. Will you submit the incriminating emails to the police? Max handed over his phone, and at that moment, my sister-in-law finally realized it was over. A police officer, a friend of my brother's who had attended the funeral, arrested them both, bringing them to justice. Afterward, they were given long sentences. Thanks to the efforts of the lawyer I hired, Summer was able to receive $100,000 from the Crime Victims Compensation Program, which helps victims' families regain peace in their lives. Although she was deeply affected by the incident and took time to recover, she eventually became more cheerful after being adopted by me. I vowed to give this child all the love that my brother would have. How did you find this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.